All right. Hi, everybody. Well, first, before I introduce myself, let's give a round of applause to Lauren Keeson, who puts on this event. It's a big job, and she always gets the best and brightest panelists. And if you look around, you haven't met anybody here tonight. You see someone that looks interesting, a topic that you want to discuss more. That's what this is all about. So this is why we're here. Welcome. My name is Danya Hamad. If you came in a little earlier, you perhaps saw me in the back with Steve doing some interviews. And those will be available on the Disruptive Technologists YouTube page and also the newsletter. So if you missed anything, you can go back and rewatch it. Okay, so tonight, NYC, the smart city of tomorrow. What an exciting topic. And we're all here in NYC, so lucky us. Before we get started, and I hand this over to Oliver, who will be our moderator tonight, we have some sponsors to thank. Okay, number one, most importantly, Microsoft. Let's give a big hand to them. This is why we're here. Microsoft, wonderful company. We love being in this space. Microsoft's mission is to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. And lucky for us, we have a Microsoft rep with us tonight, who is right behind me, Microsoft Reactor, Sep DiMeglio. You will be seeing him shortly. We're going to pull out some orange cards so people get some prizes. Very exciting. So let me tell you about the Reactor space. So Microsoft Reactors are neighborhood campuses where developer and startup communities meet, learn, and connect, combining training on the latest technology, community meetups, and events with leaders in the industry. Reactors create an inclusive community for interaction and inspiration. So if you want to follow them, it's at MSFT Reactor on Twitter to learn more. We also have Ankin & Ankin. They are the premier accounting and advisory firm that passionately provides expert advice to businesses. And they are providing the cool giveaways tonight. So you guys have a chance to win a lot of awesome prizes. Ankin has been rewarded with the distinctions of being named one of the best accounting firms in the nation. One of the top 10 large companies to work for in New York State, Society for Humane Resource Management. One of the best accounting firms in the nation to work for, Accounting Today. A best place to work in New York. Best accounting firm in North America. And U.S. Overall Accounting Firm of the Year. So a lot of wonderful accolades. Okay, so now reintroducing Sep DiMeglio, our Disruptive Microsoft team. So he is going to help pick some winners. And you guys are amongst the audience tonight, so one of you could be going home with a very exclusive prize. What do we have, Sep?
We have.
Wow.
It's fresh out. I'm just showing you all. Take it out of the classic. We have Disruptive Technologists t-shirts. Mm-hmm. Yes. They're 2X right now.
But what can we do with them, Sep?
We can do so much with them right now. In this holiday season, lots of ribbons on sale. You could cut it up.
Make a cute little crop top.
A corset, crop top.
Yeah, those are in.
Yeah, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Lauren said if you get this and you don't want a 2X and to be crafty, you can give Sarah over here your address and they'll send you the size that you want. So inclusive, but I vote
Be crafty.
be crafty.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to
No
be
excuse.
A bit more creative.
All right, well,
In addition to those,
we have more. What else do we have?
we have Disruptive Technologists mugs. Who needs to be crafty with t-shirts when you could just get a one-size-fits-all mug?
When you don't have to do anything
Yeah.
but pour liquid in it. Amazing.
Who doesn't love that?
All right.
Disrupt your morning routine with a Disruptive Technologist mug. Lastly, we have the origins of Disruptive Technologists literature. It's a book written by our very own Lauren,
Yes.
event organizer.
And if you win it, you should have her sign it since the author's here
song
tonight.
Signed by the author. Hopefully no additional charge.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be pulling out of this fishbowl. Everyone get a chance to put their thing in that wanted to participate. I think it was business card / orange piece of paper. Everyone good? Cool, cool, cool.
Well, there's no choice now, right?
We have 15 lucky winners today. 5 for each item. Should I go in order, or should I mix it up and then people can fight for the
Do
like Hunger
whatever,
Games style?
whatever your
Pick
heart.
whatever you want. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Goodness, I apologize in advance if I say your name wrong. I usually do. So the first one.
That's Italian. You should know.
Yeah. Oh, I thought that was another letter. Gianfranco. Oh.
Yay.
You can stay on the side. Wolf. You want to go there?
You know what?
T-shirt. Yeah.
Oh no, yeah.
I guess
No budget for the T-shirt cannon this time. Next
Oh,
time.
Yeah, we need to get one of those. I'll gladly shoot T-shirt cannons at people. I might end up on some paperwork though. I don't know how Microsoft would feel about that. Okay. We have Patricia Lee Wasterlane? Wasterlane.
Okay.
Ooh.
Congrats.
I got 2 out of the 3 names correct
Yeah.
though, so I count that as a win
That's
for
good
myself.
for him. Yeah.
3, we have Matt Casey. Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Congrats.
I hope I said that one right. It was close. You can step over. Oh, you're gonna walk? Yeah, I'll walk.
Matt's over there.
Full service this time. Love that. We have Fred Alusa. Oh, on this side. Did I do 2 and 2? Good on me. That's 4. Don't worry. We have 11. Oh, did I say 15?
You said
11
15.
more. Katrin Calden. Ooh, yes. Fantastic. I think we have full service. You could stay in that area. We're going to have someone walk over to you, pick your prize. 5. Maria Brown. Oh, another one. I'm really good at mixing the sides up. I grabbed 2, so I'm going to say the other one. John Matthews.
Okay.
Oh, I need to get more on the left.
Maybe you just shake it. Give it a good shake. Wow.
I lost count. Barbara Alpent or Alpert? Alpent.
Here she is.
You what?
And then I think one more, right?
15.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
4,
Oh,
5, 6.
okay.
Don't take joy away from these people.
All right, sorry. We have a lot more.
We have a lot more. I'm on Amelia Cow. 8. Suji Kim.
Yay.
Did I say it right?
Okay, great.
Great say. 9? Was that 9? Are you keeping count?
No,
Come on.
I'm not keeping count.
Dina Wall. Ooh, I'm doing really good at balance. I need to get to the far left. Maybe the far left didn't participate.
Okay, 11. We're at 11.
11. So we have, this is our 12. Nirmal Thapa. Oh, I said I needed the far left. Look at that. Oh, yeah.
What are you still in the mug?
This is the last mug we have, so if you want it, you get it. Ooh. Kathleen Tripp. Hello, I like your business card. Looks like it might be a hint. Water sponsor of the night. Thank Kathleen. Phan Lipton. Oh, I'm really great at balance tonight. I think that might have been 15.
I think so.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah, 15.
I lost count. 3, 4, 5, 6, 14. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
All right, this one's it. If you don't get today's, though, remember, Disruptive Tech meets quarterly, and they get prizes every time. And I usually announce them, so come back for more of this. Nikita Vitas? Vitus?
Yay.
I like your name.
All right. Congrats to our winners.
Yeah, round of applause for our winner.
Okay. Thank you, Seth.
Yes.
Lovely.
Love that.
Back to our sponsors. So we also want to thank McCarter and English, LLP, Law McCarter and English. So McCarter and English, they're a firm of approximately 400 lawyers with offices in Boston, Hartford, Stamford, New York, Newark, East Brunswick, Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Washington, D.C. So they cover a lot of ground. In continuous business for more than 170 years, they are among the oldest and largest firms in America. And there are a lot of different industries. I'm going to just name a few. You have to look up more because they are so wonderful to us, and you'll see that they sponsor us every time. So very, very fortunate to have them. Their areas are banking and finance, blockchain, cannabis, climate change, consumer financial services, energy and utilities, life sciences, manufacturing, prop tech, sports law, retail hospitality. So like I said, if you want to learn more, look them up online or come to another event. We'll be happy to point you in the right direction. We also want to thank another very special sponsor, if you've seen the camera in the back, and our guy Steve videoing this whole production, Zeotag. They are interactive video services that sponsor us every time and document this wonderful event. So Zeotag is a partner of Disruptive Technologists. You can meet the founders, Jeff and Steve. So Steve's in the back. Jeff is somewhere around here. We'll find him. As they videotape our event tonight, Zeotag provides innovative technologies that greatly extend the intelligence, functionality, and monetization options of all forms of web and audio. It's a flagship product, and the Zeotag media publishing platform is a robust host-based framework that uses sophisticated metadata to make online media content easily searched, navigated, and shared, ultimately, and consumed. And this next sponsor, you probably have, well, everyone's got a lot of them right now.
Oh,
Battery?
your laptop.
Uh-oh, low battery on the laptop.
Oh, man.
Whoever's laptop this is, we need a charger, a stat. Okay, well, while we're searching for that, we are going to talk about a sponsor that is in everyone's hands at the moment, Hint. Hint Water, so lovely to us here at Disruptive Tech. So Hint contains no sugar, diet sweeteners, calories, or preservatives. Their water brands are non-GMO certified and Whole30 approved. They are vegan and contain no MSG, nuts, soy, or gluten. Their bottles have always been BPA-free, and they are continuously improving their bottling to reduce the amount of plastic and other non-renewable resources. So this, it said their goal was 2018, but I'm sure with updated, it was to use 40% less plastic per bottle than their original 16-ounce. So I know they've been working very hard to be, conserve more for the environment and reduce plastic. So we'd like to thank Hint here for providing the water and keeping our audience and our panelists hydrated and happy. So thank you, Hint. Okay. Well, do you need a few more minutes? Are we all set?
We'll figure it out.
All right, we will figure it out. And that being said, we are going to turn this over to our lovely panel and our host for the night as he sits down, Oliver Christie. Thank you so much. Take it away.
Thank you, and good evening, and welcome to another Disruptive Technologists, where this evening we'll be talking on how to make New York a smart city, what that means, and some of the context. So, as my slides are all getting fixed and the power is being restored, well done for coming out. We were fully booked. We were at capacity. You are the brave souls who decided to make it through the weather. Yes, there's a bit of snow, but I think we're New Yorkers. We can cope with it. So, I will now point at my slide. And so the format for this evening, we have the first panel, who I will introduce in a minute, followed by three big questions. The questions are centered around New York is a smart city in the future. After that, we will have a fireside chat. And again, I will point to my slide. You'll get the idea. So please hang around for the fireside chat afterwards. And we wrap up at about 10 to 9. Oh, there we go, 5 to 9. And we will have drinks afterwards. How are you doing, Sep?
Good.
We are doing good. We have Microsoft on the case. So the fireside chat afterwards, please stick around. Some very interesting people, interesting conversations. And as always, just before, we'll have a disclaimer. Yes, a legal disclaimer, but really it's so that the panelists can talk openly. We want to ask the hard questions. We want to get interesting answers. So everyone here tonight, with maybe one exception, is talking with their own views. So keep that in mind. Let's be nice. And then afterwards, we'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A. So think about your questions. We will get to you. And just make sure your question is in the form of a question. So no long statements. Yes, you can be political, but let's be nice. So without further ado, our panelists, we have, to my left, Eric Adams, the current Brooklyn president, and very possibly the next mayor of New York.
I saw the people that didn't clap.
So he's transforming Brooklyn. He's also transforming himself at the moment. Leaner, fitter, and better to lead. So we'll talk about that in a second. To his left is Tara Phan, the CEO of Nemina. Have I said that right?
You said all of those things pretty well, yeah.
Close enough, right?
Close enough.
And you've got a good origin story for the name, which we'll come to as well. And they've got some fantastic imaging recognition technology, not facial recognition, imaging recognition with a focus on privacy. And it's being used in the city right now. To her left is Andrew Rasiej, the founder of Civic Hall, and also the founder of Personal Democratic Media. He's very connected in New York, doing a lot of very interesting things, a thought leader and much more. To his left, I do, don't I?
Okay, there you are.
There we are, there we are.
One more.
And one more.
Okay.
All looking fantastic up there. There's a bit of leadership here already. And Esther Dyson, the founder of Wellville, a journalist, a thinker, a thought leader, an altogether interesting person, someone you should go and investigate her readings, her thoughts. And last, but certainly not least, Jordan Gitterman, the founder of Bank, a blockchain technology, a new type of crypto with a social emphasis.
And we go to the same hairstylist.
And you and I have a mutual friend. We'll discuss.
Just to let you know, we don't have to be on the panel with the hairstyle, but it helps. So what I thought I'd do, rather than jump straight into technology, is actually ask the panelists, oh, and that's me with the hair, what their New York story is. So we have a lot of native New Yorkers. You can tell from my accent I'm not really one of them. I've been here for 11 years, full-time, and many times before. But Eric, you're a New Yorker. What's your story? What did you...
Born in Brooklyn, when it was old Brooklyn, moved to Queens, and returned to Brooklyn almost 30 years ago. and just love the energy and spirit and the diversity of Brooklyn. 47% of Brooklynites speak a language other than English at home, and that's my story. You can walk into a Mexican restaurant with a Jewish cook making a German meal that he learned from his Portuguese girlfriend. So that is what Brooklyn is a lot alike. The fusion, the diversity, that's it.
It's really the most fantastic thing about the city. So, what's the most frustrating thing?
Traffic.
There you go.
That's it.
And I'll go along the panel. So, what makes you proud to be a New Yorker? If you've got an interesting, crazy story, because there's a lot of them. And what's your biggest frustration with the
I have a lot
city?
of crazy stories. Well, I will say, our company, which you'll hear more about, we actually started in St. Louis, Missouri, and we very intentionally moved our company to Brooklyn. Officially in 2017, we were originally brought to New York in early 2016 by an accelerator called UrbanX. And just to kind of piggyback on Eric's statement, we moved specifically here because it is a diverse place and we work with cities and communities of all types. So we wanted to work in a place that actually kind of looked like all the other communities that we might serve. So that's very intentional. And we do actually measure traffic. So we're also going to be solving some of that problem. I have way too many crazy stories to begin to say. I will say the thing I love about New York is it's the biggest city and also feels sometimes like the smallest town. You just run into people on the street or have crazy coincidences that it's hard to fathom with a city with this many people in it that still happens. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. So I'm also very happy to be a New Yorker because of many reasons that were just mentioned: diversity and its size, its history, and most importantly, recently, it's being recognized as a true tech center because for many, many years, those of us who have worked in tech had to make the argument that New York was not Silicon Valley, it was not California, and that it had a different culture and a different perspective on how technology might be utilized in the future. And just to give you a sense about how far we've come, it's really amazing to be in this room. This room is actually probably one of the most diverse technology groups I've ever seen. How many people are here would identify as of color? That's like about a third. That's more than typical for the tech community. How many, and women, could you put women, please raise your hand? That's another great sign. If we were in Silicon Valley, it would probably be about, maybe a tenth of that in terms of color. Women maybe a little bit more, but we clearly are starting to move more into a diverse arena. But just a quick crazy story, just to tell you how far we've come. I actually ran for public advocate in 2005 on a platform to make New York City a wireless city, and with the idea that the public advocate's office should really be a network, not just an individual. And when I was running for office, I had to do a couple of things, like go to talk to editorial boards to convince them to endorse me, and one of the editorial boards was the New York Times editorial board. And literally, during the interview, they asked me to explain to them what Wi-Fi was. That was in 2005. And I know he's running for president now. Mike Bloomberg even said something about asking me if we would have to dig up the streets. So literally, we've come in 14 years. That was 2005. It's now 14 years. We've come a long, long way. And I'm very happy to see that there are people running for office like Eric who actually understand how technology can change people's lives for the better. So I'm really glad that this is happening in New York.
Biggest frustration you have?
Biggest frustration? I still find it unbelievable that you can get on the subway and you still cannot get Wi-Fi. How can you see something and say something if you can't actually do it on the trains?
Yeah. I haven't even got my two-factor on as well.
Yeah, you don't have Teams on your computer, Oliver. Teams, they
No, I
pass
don't.
Slack.
Okay, I'll be a New Yorker and just keep talking. Like many New Yorkers, I moved here from somewhere else, but I've actually lived here longer, probably the most of you, since 1972. Interestingly, a lot of people think I live in Silicon Valley because I was in the tech industry, but like a real New Yorker, I never learned how to drive. And if you get close, you can see what's on my cell phone.
The MTA map.
For those that can't see, it's a subway map.
I love it. Just, one other thing about cities. I love cities. I have subway cards from Moscow, London, Washington, Boston, Toronto, Seattle. I have a Clipper card from San Francisco, a MARTA card from Atlanta, and my favorite is my Troika card from Moscow. But what I'm doing now actually is much more involved with small communities that they have the diversity, but they're much more segregated than New York. They don't have the tech community, they don't have the wealth, and they have a lot of people who feel very much disenfranchised. So I've been learning a lot.
So I'll put you on the spot with all those that list of subways around the world. Where does New York rank?
I believe other than London, it's the largest. I mean, they're up there.
But not necessarily the best.
No, they're terrible.
Yeah, there we go.
The Moscow Metro I tried to meet the head of the Moscow Metro. It's the best thing, the only thing that works well in Russia, pretty much.
Yeah.
And they keep adding new lines.
Yeah.
Oh, you need a mic?
No, I don't need a mic. I have my own. So I'm a New Yorker, born and bred. I grew up mostly in Manhattan. I was born in a hospital that's no longer there called Flower Fifth Avenue Hospital. And what I love about this city is our spirit. And I think that it really came out after 9/11. You could really see what New York was about at that point. As a kid, I guess, Eric, you're probably close to my age, man. We had a rough and tumble city. And there was no technology really, so to speak of. We didn't use computers in school. And so I think that we've evolved a tremendous amount. And all these fellow techies who are saying there's much more to evolve, and we're all working on it. Like Esther, I'm also working on smaller communities per se, in delivering basic human needs to these communities. And I think that's the first order of the utility of technology is to make sure that people have their basic human needs. By delivering basic human needs and tracking different trades, we're also able to do other things, which is come up with valuations of currencies, valuations of products. And the idea is to create systems where people have the information to make intelligent decisions, intelligent trades with less friction.
So we'll let you pitch in a second. So getting on to our next question, and we're going old school with the slides, but it seems to work. So question number 2. What technology can really help New York City? What could be done to improve the city from a tech point of view? I'm actually going to reverse things. So Eric, you'll sit there, and I'll let the panelists pitch to you. So actually, let's start on your left. Now, it's slightly cheating because you already work with the city, don't you?
Not actually this city government,
right.
But we work in this city with other entities, and we work in 17 cities in 5 countries. We might be actually around 19 or 20 as of this week. Yeah.
Do you want to describe some of the use cases for the technology and, frankly, why your approach is better, especially from the privacy side?
Yeah, so just to briefly explain what we do, basically we measure all forms of street-level traffic for cities. So if you think about how cities are planned, especially in the US, most of it has been around car counts because it's easy, you put a tube across the road, you know how many cars go by. But all the things that don't move in lanes, people, bicycles, and increasingly we see other things like delivery robots and scooters. It's been harder to count those things or even actually to differentiate between types of vehicles. So I want to actually know how many buses go by and freight trucks versus cars. A lot of the existing kind of low-tech mechanical sensors for vehicles don't detect those things either. So our approach, first and foremost, wanting to measure bicycle and pedestrian traffic so that cities could actually account for everyone in transportation planning. Our approach is to use computer vision. What that means is we make a sensor that is camera-based. It takes a picture of the street a few times per second, like a very slow frame rate video, and we use AI to analyze those images to say what type of object is there, how fast is it going, what path does it take through the street. And what is unique about our company compared to, say, a traffic camera is that we do all of the image processing inside the device so that we don't have to save or transmit any of the imagery, and we don't ever collect any personally identifiable information. So there's no way after the fact for, let's say, a city to say, oh, there was an incident there, please give us 30 seconds or 5 minutes of that video. We actually don't have it. All of the imagery gets destroyed immediately after being processed on site. And so what instead we're doing is turning imagery into real-time intelligence, and we basically show, you can go on our website to see the actual visuals. They're really cool, but basically we show the desire lines of objects, meaning the paths that they take through the street, and we allow planners to kind of analyze, for example, how many bicyclists are still riding on the sidewalk versus in a bike lane, or what's the average dwell time or wait time of a pedestrian at the bus stop. So we're able to provide all of this sort of intelligence that's sort of an urban planner's dream. A lot of this stuff, historically at best was being collected manually, someone with a clicker and a clipboard, and we're able to collect this 24/7, 365 in a very privacy by design, secure, safe, and ethical way. So in explaining all of that, I forgot what the question was.
So I'm thinking maybe a use case.
How can we,
maybe describing the scaffolding.
Yeah, so we have, we also, I'll say, are pretty unique in that we don't really look at grid level traffic. We look very much at street level. So
now you're pitching to Eric. So how is this going to help day-to-day New Yorkers?
Yeah, so we detect all kinds of things that we turn into interesting use cases. I think Eric is already familiar with one we did in downtown Brooklyn. We measured Fulton Pedestrian Mall and found that pretty much like clockwork, when scaffolding comes up and scaffolding goes down, we were able to show that anytime scaffolding is live in the street, pedestrians are 53.3% more likely to just walk out into the street somewhat randomly or more than otherwise. And that has huge implications because in New York City, there are about 300 miles of active scaffolding every single day. And so when you think about a city that is trying to get to vision zero bicycle and pedestrian fatalities, we have 300 miles of infrastructure that's actually causing somewhat unsafe pedestrian behaviors. Another example outside of actually transportation, we work with Grand Central Partnership, so the business improvement district around Grand Central Station, and we're measuring the buildup of trash bags so that they can understand the best pickup schedule to keep the sidewalk as clean as possible for the lowest cost. And that has impacts on pedestrian safety because sometimes it's so busy that literally trash is, causing pedestrians to have to walk off the sidewalk.
And you're finding
it also
it much
minimizes
easier.
rat
You're finding it
traffic.
easier to work. You're finding it easier to work with partnerships rather than directly with, say, the mayor's office.
Unfortunately, in New York City, yes.
Yeah.
Just to give a little bit of context, and I understand why and I appreciate it, but procurement in New York City is very, very difficult. I think it was in maybe May or June, DOT released an RFP for video traffic counting system, so presumably more of like a traditional traffic camera. That RFP was almost 500 pages long. So for a startup, they have these procurement processes to keep things fair and prevent corruption. But unfortunately, it's kind of gone so far in the other direction that a 10-person company like ours just would never have the capacity to even fill out the RFP. Even if it were kind of written to the spec of our product, which truthfully is how a lot of RFPs are written, is, the city knows what they want to procure.
So
Eric,
the
procurement
first,
process.
The first thing to solve for, procurement.
Just that little
Yeah.
thing that,
Yeah.
you know.
Andrew, what's been your experience of working with the city?
Well, just building on that topic of procurement, I would love to have a smart city, but I'd be willing to accept a less dumb city first. And one of the challenges for leaders like Eric is that they are literally being given infrastructure that's been around, whether it be the legal infrastructure like procurement or the physical infrastructure that's been around for decades, built up in the industrial age. It's really hard to convert a city as successful as New York into a 21st century city for physical reasons, legal reasons, and political and social reasons. It's really, really hard to do. But essentially, Mike Bloomberg was here for 12 years and did a lot of great things in some ways. Maybe some people don't agree with some of the things he's done, but he essentially handed Bill de Blasio the same 1980s Pontiac that he was given when he became mayor. And maybe there's been some advancement now because of technologies, the commoditization of some technologies. So when Eric gets elected, he's going to be driving like a 1996 Camry. It might have like one plug to do a little bit of diagnostics, but it's certainly not a Tesla. And there are reasons why a government doesn't actually become a Tesla right away, because governments can't actually do things in beta easily. There's a lot more risk. Things have to work from the very beginning. It's really hard to do all these changes, but there's some real great things that could be done now. So standardizing data is one of those things. Agencies produce massive amounts of data. There's actually an office of Mayor's Office of Data Analytics. There's an actually great open data law in New York City. And that goes to this larger point, which is that not all the innovations that happen in technology as it relates to the civil environment are the ones that are created by government. In fact, I would argue that there's actually a much larger potential around the idea of civic tech as opposed to gov tech. So let me see if I can try to explain the difference. Civic tech is any technology that's for the public good, full stop. Gov tech is any technology that the government uses to deliver the services that it's supposed to deliver to the public, in many cases also for the public good, but not necessarily. So let me give you an example. If Palantir is building a database for ICE, helping ICE identify where 11 million undocumented people are hiding in the United States, I would not call that civic tech.
We weren't going to talk about Trump. Did you expect de Blasio to get more done, or do you think it's just very hard?
I think it's very hard. I mean, I tried very hard, to be completely honest, to convince the mayor to appoint a deputy mayor for technology and to rethink the way the city approaches technology. He was opposed to that because the previous mayor had many deputy mayors and he wanted to have one administrative deputy mayor and fewer. So he agreed to have the office of the CTO, Chief Technology Officer. And there have been a couple of people in that role. But again, they don't have much of a budget. There are 140 some odd agencies in New York City. 71 of them have all their technology managed by an agency called DO-IT, Department of Information Technology. The others have their own or don't do it, right?
And do it slowly.
And so that's an example. They don't have standardized data. They don't have any standardized processes for training their workers or upskilling their workers. In fact, there's a civil service exam and negotiations with the unions where if you need a technologist for your project in an agency, you can't actually hire the most qualified person. You have to actually go back to the union and find somebody who is considered a technologist but may not be working in the latest form of technology. So that what ends up happening is that agency then hires a consulting firm to do the work, costing the city more and not changing the culture inside that agency. But if you think about the challenges that we face, like cybersecurity, and also that the technology keeps changing, there's a huge need to upskill all civil servants to understand how to take advantage of these technologies. So my basic pitch to Eric is to actually develop a full-scale strategic plan to convert all of New York City government technology into a more 21st century mindset, and procurement being one of them. Just as a quick example, procurement means buying once. Maybe we should call it commissioning, where you're buying software that has to constantly be updated and kept up to date, the same way your Mac or your PC is being updated, in order for the technology not to be obsolete the day it's delivered by the contractor to the city, as just one example.
So we're in Microsoft. It feels like that's much more their model. would they be a better city partner?
Well, they already are. I mean,
they already
that's
are,
the other
but-
challenge, right?
yeah.
Which is that Microsoft, Accenture, or Ernst & Young, these are huge companies that have massive contracts, and they're incumbents, and they actually don't want to see startups eat their lunch and deliver certain services. So they'll argue for maintaining in order to satisfy either the risk factors or other, bureaucracies that allow them to continue to make more and more money. So that's why you need, what's really lacking is not actually technology, it's a vision on how to utilize technology to create a more equitable city.
Fantastic. Eric, I think you might have some ideas. We'll come to you in a minute there. Esther, you've lived in more than one city. You have ideas on how the city functions.
I've got a bunch of magic tricks for you. The first, though, as someone who lives right near 14th Street, it is now, the cars are gone, but the bicycles are crazy, and they don't follow the street lights, and they weave around. And I'd love to have your software.
Let's make it happen.
I don't even want to protect their privacy. I want them to be, stopped. On procurement, I've actually got an investment in a company called City Mart that helps smaller companies become visible to cities, and I won't do the pitch, but I will give you the name, City Mart.
And is that out in New York, or is it?
Based in New York.
Right.
Yeah, but they're international.
It's global,
Yeah,
so
the
it
guy
really
who
can be anywhere.
founded it is
Yeah.
German, and his original partner was Danish or something.
Right.
But this is a company that I don't have an investment in, but it's a startup. It analyzes sewage. So
There's a lot here.
yeah, typically if you talk to the hospitals now, they're all reducing their opioid prescriptions, and they're really proud. But they have no idea what's happening on the streets. And on the streets, it's going in the other direction. And in this case, totally privacy protecting. You can look at the sewage. You can make the distinction between metabolized and unmetabolized drugs. You can see how much cocaine, how much fentanyl. I think you can also see how much broccoli, but that's less interesting. And you can get a much better understanding of what's going on down to sort of the level of where the sewage pipes come from. But it's very privacy protective. It's also politician invulnerable. Like the data is real. You can't tell if it's 10 people with one dose or one person with 10 doses, but you can really look at what's happening.
Right.
And
What's the name of the company?
it's called Aquavitas. It comes from Arizona State University.
I was dreading to think what the name was going to be. Considering what they do.
Deep shit, right?
Deep shit.
I know another company that does that also called BioBot Analytics.
They're both interesting. I think maybe I'm biased. And this comes to my last point. One of the most interesting things AI is going to do is not make decisions for us, but raise the question of bias in the human beings. Because all AI does is kind of reflect or model the decisions human beings have been making without question. But now if you use AI, suddenly you discover, the judges are...
Do you mind if I point out it's
Yeah.
not going to happen, it's happening now?
Yeah.
So sentencing is racist because how we sentence is racist. If you're getting a mortgage loan,
Yes.
it's affected by that. And anything else you can think of. Garbage in, garbage out is very apt.
Right, and suddenly it's now becoming visible, which
But
is
also
great.
it's absolutely fine to do this in New York.
Pardon?
Absolutely, it's fine to, there's very few laws against this in New York.
Yeah, but now, again, the data will help show what's going on, and
Do you think we care though?
yes. Otherwise I'd go kill myself. I'm an optimist. It's enough of us care.
Do you think,
one
all right,
thing-
I'll rephrase it, do you think we care enough as a society as a whole, including government?
It's what I'm devoting my life to. If you talk to children who haven't been deeply damaged, one thing that human beings have, and so do chimpanzees, is a sense of justice. They do these wonderful little experiments where, you have two chimpanzees and one chimpanzee gets bananas and the other one gets cucumbers, and the guy with cucumbers notices. And ultimately, yes, we do care. It gets beaten out of us, it gets trained out of us.
But the chimp with bananas has to care.
Yes.
In this analogy.
Sorry, I said it wrong.
Okay.
He sort of supports the other guy complaining.
Jordan, talking of fairness, what's your model of fairness? How do you think New York City could be more fair as you apply technology?
So the project that I'm involved in is on the blockchain, and a good blockchain can provide fairness. So I would urge Eric to implement blockchains in as many ways as possible. Of course, each blockchain has its own characteristics, but they're impenetratable if you have a good blockchain, meaning you can't penetrate it and hack it. So, for example, using Bitcoin's blockchain, it's around 11 years or 12 years now. It's never been hacked.
But it is fantastic for money laundering. The best thing in the world.
The US dollar is the best. There's nothing better than the US dollar.
True, this is even quicker though, I think.
But, look, there's good and there's bad to everything. You can take...
How would you use it for New York City? You have lots of
the first use would be
communities and so
voting.
on.
You could put all the information on the blockchain. There will be no more fraud in that.
There would still be misguided voters, and there would be fake news and all this other stuff. Blockchain can keep the record clear, but it can't actually deal with all the stuff that happens around
No,
it.
you can't. They can't. It won't do that. But the transmission and the storage of data, the transparency of it, and the different characteristics. If you want to be a blockchain, it can be transparent and anonymous at the same time. So, they're all it's all different models.
Do you think the regulation in New York is either strong enough or moving fast enough for this technology?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Do you think the regulation around blockchain and the application of blockchain in the city, do you think it's moving fast enough?
Well, blockchain regulation isn't the issue. What's tied to blockchain are cryptocurrency, so that's the issue. The regulation of blockchain, you can use it without the utility of a cryptocurrency. So you can use it for record storage and stuff like that. I've been bumping into the mayor of Miami, Suarez, who is implementing it in so many different ways down there. And he's trying to make Miami a technologically advanced city. And the main technology that he goes to is blockchain.
So this is an interesting thing. So New York versus Miami. Eric, what type of city do we want to be? What matters? What matters to you?
Well, I think at first these were great indicators of some of the things that we need to do, but I believe you hit it on the head when you stated you don't want smart city with dumb people. You don't want smart city with dumb legislators to how we evolve our city. And I started policing. I was a former police officer. I started policing. I was a computer programmer. And when I went into
which language?
COBOL and assembly. I know that's hieroglyphics right now, but I was actually told to go into policing. That was another story. I wanted to start my own firm, get Cisco qualified, and I was part of the team that wrote OLTPS, Online Transit Police Processing System, that gave way to ComStat, and it was an aha moment for me because I saw the transformative powers of real-time policing. We started no longer policing in the annual phase. We started looking at real-time policing. We went from being reactive to proactive to predictive. And 25 years later, it didn't matter who was the mayor or the police commissioner, we are in a safer city because of that. And you see all the economic stability in this city is coming from the prerequisite to prosperity is public safety. But it was a pivotal moment because if every agency in the city would have followed a real-time governing model, we will have a different city right now. And let me tell you why we're not. Because dysfunctionality is profitable. People profit off of the dysfunctionality of the city. When you don't use drones to inspect NYCHA buildings, you can keep spending $30 million a year to have scaffolds around the building, and it protects that. When you don't use real-time systems to govern our system to see where money is being hemorrhaged through all of our agencies, then people are profiting from that. If you start tracking the dollars, you'll see that long-standing relationships, agencies, lobbyists, consultants, everyone eats off of the tax dollars of New York. Government is like my son used to be. He would spend his money, then put his hands in my pockets. That's what government is doing to us every day. You don't have a $92 billion budget. Difficult for Microsoft, for Dell, all of these tech giants to come in and help us run this city in an efficient manner. We were willing to do it in policing because it was about saving lives. And there's a difference. And what really troubles me the most about this is the gap. AI, the Industrial Revolution was the first time we overcame the limitation of our muscles. AI is the first time we're going to overcome the limitations of our minds and our brains. People are afraid of that. And when you have a conversation of blockchain, this room is able to analyze that. But if I go to Brownsville and say blockchain, they don't have a clue. And so we're going to have a divide that is beyond expectation. We're training 47% of our young people are being trained for jobs that's not going to exist. We're not building the pipeline. We had a 356 increase in tech startups in Brooklyn, and the number one complaints I am receiving from those startups, hey, we can't get the talent, Eric. That is the real fear that this gap is going to be so wide if we don't turn it around and have those who are the policymakers start thinking not outside the box. They have to be willing to destroy the darn box. And what do I mean by that? Let me just want to tell you this one story. Some of you know I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I lost my sight in my left eye. Doctor said, Eric, you're going to be blind in a year. Had permanent nerve damage in my hands and feet. He said, you're going to lose some fingers and toes. I found out that it was all about my diet. It was never in my DNA. It was in my dinner. And I decided to change that, reverse my 3 weeks after going to what one would consider a whole food plant-based diet. My vision came back. 3 months later, my diabetes went in remission. My nerve damage went away. My cholesterol normalized. My 80-year-old mother, 15 years diabetic, 7 years on insulin. Mommy went on a whole food plant-based diet with me. 2 months later, she called me, baby, I'm off of all my insulin. She was on 9 medications. You know, so the drug dealer is not the guy in the corner. It's the three-piece pharmaceutical industry that have us hooked on drugs. But that's another story. So I go to the city and I state that, hey, we can reverse diseases. We no longer have to live with diseases. And I just wanted one pilot project to be in place to show the science so that we can look at the clinical trials. The opposition from people who eat off of having us inject ourselves with insulin all the time, being on metformin, being on statin, they got in the way until I had to get forceful about it. Now we have a project at Bellevue Hospital, first of its kind. 170 people are in the program, 600 people are there. The numbers are just remarkable that we're reversing diseases for the first time. That is the fear. So what we're up against, we're not only up against the technology, we're up against the industries that eat off of the dysfunctionality of this city and go across America. Every city in America is experiencing the same dysfunctionality. One agency creates the crisis, the next agency responds to the crisis. That is, we need to change the mindset of being disruptive, and we must have an open mindset, and that is how we have to start judging our elected officials. Are you open enough to ensure that cities run the way they ought to run? We should not be hemorrhaging the money that we're hemorrhaging in this city.
Fantastic. You mentioned diversity. We have the most diverse city in the country, possibly the world. But it feels like resources, education, it's not evenly placed. People are getting left behind. There's over 7,000 startups. Combined, they generate over $71 billion. Where's the disconnect? I mean, you sought education, and you've transformed.
Because, we have three brains: limbic, cerebellum, which is the seat of our subconscious mind, is our reptilian brain. It is, we could say anything in our neocortex. That sounds great. That's politically correct. But our cerebellum, the seat of our subconscious mind, where all of those, the brain stores all that we believe. In the heart of our cerebellum, we don't believe black and brown people can learn. We say it's a nice speech. We say all children can learn, but why all of America, the level ones in education, are black and brown, particularly boys? And when you're in
Isn't this fucking crazy? I know I can say it. Isn't this fucking crazy?
You're fucking right. So when you have, and this is some deep stuff because the studies are real. When you have teachers that are in front of a classroom of students in South Jamaica, Queens, and in her cerebellum, her reptilian brain, she says, this kid can't learn. And when you have mothers who say, all I want my baby just to do is survive. I don't want my baby to be shot and killed, just survive. I don't care if he's not a scholar, just survive. When you have the children who believe they can learn, the studies show that if a teacher, if the people around these babies don't believe in them, then they're not going to believe in themselves. The studies are remarkable. But the neuroplasticity of our brains tell us we can rewire our brains, and we need to rewire the teachers who are teaching these babies, and we need to show them how they can start believing in themselves. That's why I sent teachers away in Brooklyn to learn meditation, mindfulness, and yoga, because every child should start their day with 20 minutes of meditation. These children are broken in two. And if you're telling them, learn to read and write and divide, they're saying, who's going to divide me? I just saw a 18-year-old woman stabbed in my community. Who's going to minister to me? I had 11 people shot at a block party. Who's going to deal with my pain? So these babies are not learning because, number one, we don't believe in them, and we're not looking at what neurologists are telling us. These children are experiencing PTSD, and we have to start dealing with that PTSD in a real way. Now, some people may say, well, Eric, you come with that hippie stuff. No, look at the science. I come from the science place. Then we have to get away from pre-K and 3K. The first 100 days of a child's life, their brain grows 80%. 80% between 0 and 2. 10 million brain cells when they are a month old. 10 billion when they're 24 months old. Paris is now having school for their children when they're young. We're already out the box. If a mother's not given the right folic acid, the right iron, that child is going to be born with cognitive inadequacies. They're not going to be the right emotional intelligence, their inability to learn. These kids are set up. They're set up at birth. We already know that these children are not going to make it. That is why 80% of the children on Rikers Island don't have a high school diploma or equivalency diploma. 55% of them have a learning disability. 46% of them have mental health. 30 to 40% are dyslexic. That is the problem. We're setting the children up, and then we say, for failure, then we say, why are you failing? We set them up from the beginning. And they could learn if we start being true, identifying the problem, and start addressing the problem. I don't want to move the deck chairs around on the Titanic. I want to roll up my sleeve, get my ass in the hole, and fix the hole so we can sail our children to a true destiny.
So again, I'll go from the other end. What needs to change to make a smart city, to make some of these things happen?
Well, the first thing I'll say, Eric is hitting the nail on the head. These are basic things that we can do. I mean, everybody has the ability to meditate. It changes your pattern of thinking. You can go from being enraged to being calm. Every emotion has a breathing pattern. These are just basic things that we haven't touched on. I didn't touch on it, when I was a child. And certainly diet is a simple, basic thing. So the question is, what's next? That is the next thing, what Eric said. I mean, these are the things that can be done immediately. We don't need additional really money for that or anything. That's just education. As far as from a technological standpoint, again, I will just keep going back and back to the blockchain because of the fact that we have to reallocate the assets that we're using. The world wastes 1/3 of its food. 1/3 of its food. We're going to wars all over the place that don't help humanity, but it's destroying ourselves, or they help a very few people. So the reallocation of...
Do you think the tech community, I mean, we're in Microsoft, we've got people from many companies here. Do you think we're having the right conversations at the moment in the city? I mean, we've got the most number of millionaires and billionaires in the city anywhere in the world. We've also got 80,000 homeless, and it's cold tonight, it's snowing. Do you think technology is focusing on the wrong thing?
Yes. I think that, if you take a look at the leaders of technology are very young people, and they spend so much of their time gaming. And some of them come up with brilliant ideas, like I saw a young 15-year-old who was able to cure pancreatic cancer with a piece of paper. The guy's incredible, but a lot of our efforts are not being put to the hemorrhaging that Eric was saying we're having on our resources. So there's a complete misallocation of our resources and of our energy. And I think that a lot of this is plain corruption. And a lot of that can be solved by implementing systems that the blockchain can do that show exact transparency. So when someone's running off with our money, we see it, it's there. You can't change it, it's traceable, you can track it down, and you can find these
Esther,
things
what
out.
would you like to change?
Yeah, well,
I'll make you God for the day.
Okay, I was going to ask if you all thought Bloomberg would make a good president, but I'm going to change it and ask if you think Eric would make a good president. So let me...
I am a president of Brooklyn.
Yeah, but
There we go.
don't think small, think out of that box. I want to mention a little bit what we're doing in our communities. And if you want to fix the problems, you got to start with the kids. And you can work through the parents. A lot of parents have given up, but they still have ambition for their kids. You're right, some others say, just keep my baby safe. But at least if you give that mother hope, she wants the best things for her kids. She's not out for herself.
And this is the same university, it's the same worldwide.
Yeah. What I learned in these small communities, which is where I went because Lord knows I don't have the resources or anything else to take on New York City, is this problem of addiction is more than drugs. It's basically, and Eric, it sounds like you know this, the addiction is basically a behavior pattern. It's very short-term focused. I need this thing right now to solve my problem. And of course it doesn't. It gives you short-term relief. It's the dopamine cycle. Dopamine is about desire, and short-term desire is addiction.
Now,
Long-term...
I'm sure everyone in the room has read Hooked, the fairly influential book which gets us building the technology to encourage the dopamine effect.
Yeah.
The author, and it's one of the best-selling books in Silicon Valley for that very reason.
Yeah.
The author has written a fantastic follow-up, Indistractable. There we are. On, yeah, why not? You should read it. It's how you can get away from this effect, how you can deprogram yourself. And then you should think, as technologists, what you could build with that mindset. So, here's a plug.
Thank you. Just to sort of finish off quickly. So short-term desire is addiction, long-term desire is purpose. And we need to change not just the people and the parenting, but the institutions. Nonprofits are addicted to short-term grants. Businesses are addicted not to income, which provides a return on your investment, but to this unsustainable growth. They're focused on capital gains rather than simply producing value proportionate to what they invest. Those things are unsustainable. And politicians, of course, are addicted to votes. And we need to create a society more focused on long-term and sustainable impact. What we're trying to do is make institutions rather than, we're not giving people fish, we're not even teaching them to fish, we're helping them to build their own fishing schools. So to get much more practical, we need to focus on pre and postnatal care, on somehow supporting parents. We need to pay child care workers more so that it becomes a dignified and honorable profession and good people go into it. And then we need to subsidize it for the parents so that
The Scandinavian model, really.
yeah, I mean, that, we gotta, you need to take care of the homeless people and the people dying short term, but we need to
Long-term.
start focus on the long term.
Andrew, what's your purpose?
So
What would you like to?
I completely agree with the notion that we should be investing much earlier in the life of a child, and teachers should be paid the highest of any profession in our society, not the lowest. But we have we have to change the engine while we're going down the road, and technology itself has become pejorative. It's no longer considered to be a tool for good. It's starting to become a tool for bad. And that's mostly because it's been designed by mostly white men who've been educated at elite universities who have bought into the model that Esther was describing and that the book is trying to get us to deprogram ourselves from. And so if we really want to build a future that's more equitable, we have to make sure that more people of color and from underserved communities are at the table, not just as customers of the technology, but are actually designing and building the technology themselves. Which brings us to workforce development. The workforce development community in New York is underfunded. It's filled mostly with nonprofits who either, for underserved communities, it's mostly nonprofits. The for-profit workforce development community, by the way, is very well funded. There are lots of white professionals who are paying General Assembly and Flatiron School thousands and thousands of dollars to get themselves upskilled in order to get that $150,000 job for themselves. But many, many people from underserved communities are currently being trained by workforce development organizations that are still teaching them how to code. And coding is going to be commoditized in the next 3 to 5 years, where coding is no longer the skill that's necessary. And we're going to have a digital divide that's going to be greater because we're not creating the workforce for the 21st century that not only delivers better technologies, but is actually delivering jobs to people in the city of New York in a meaningful way. So we have to do two things. We have to invest in infants, invest in public education and teachers, and for those who are already through the public education system but are coming from these underserved communities, we have to invest in the infrastructure to allow them to be trained and be able to be part of the workforce that not only receives the technology of the future, but actually designs them.
Do you think we can get there, considering not all of the boroughs have even got broadband?
Oh, so one of the biggest challenges around broadband, which is not to return to my campaign, but most broadband costs on average about $100 a month. What working class family can afford $1,200 a year out of their budget to be able to provide broadband for their kids at home? That's why people go to libraries or go to McDonald's, where kids are now doing their homework because they can't afford to have broadband at home. Broadband should be accessible the same way as a human right, as water and electricity at a reasonable cost. And it's not. And one of the reasons why it's not is because the telcos and the cable companies have monopolized the marketplace, mostly through their political donations, and have prevented this city from being the most wired city in the world. So what we really need is leaders like Eric, who are going to challenge the status quo and develop and actually not listen to the lobbyists, but look at the actual results, look at the data, and be able to make decisions based on the actual reality of what's happening as opposed to what's being recommended by a lobbyist.
So at the moment, legally, so I looked into how to set up a broadband company. You're not allowed to in New York.
Yeah, because they've gone into the legislature to make it illegal.
Yeah.
This is a quick story, and Eric, I think you'll appreciate this. So I met the president of the New York Public Library a few years ago. You know, went up to past the Lions, went to his office. He showed me the Magna Carta, the first wooden globe that had the Americas carved on it. And then he told everybody in this small meeting that he was really proud of the fact that 10,000 people a month were signing up for internet access at the New York City public libraries, half-hour slots. And he was really happy about that and proud. And when he finished, I said to him something like, well, that's great, Eric, but I'm sorry, great Tony. His name's Tony Marks. Why don't you let people take it home? And he goes, what do you mean take it home? He goes, we have Wi-Fi on some of our lobbies, on some of our libraries where, we sort of broadcast to the community, but how would I let them take it home? And I said, well, give students hotspots and let them take it home and be able to have internet access at home. So we literally developed a program funded by Open Society Foundation, Robin Hood, Google, and a few others, where we gave 10,000 students hotspots so they could have internet access at home. Went to Washington, got the FCC to agree to change the rules around Obama phones so they would pay for hotspots, so that literally you could provide relatively good access to people in their homes. But the basic idea here is that libraries, if they were really thinking forward 15 years ago, would be ISPs themselves. Yeah. Right? The libraries their job is to distribute information for free. If they didn't exist, if libraries didn't exist today, the copyright industry would ban them. If you think about it, libraries were the first sharing economy. Libraries are the most underfunded public institutions we have. Yeah. And they will be converted into new centers of civic innovation if those reading rooms become places for collaboration, access to information, with support from leaders like Eric. So we need to reinvent the idea of civic engagement as not something that's just around voting or jury duty. It's about being present in community and supporting infrastructure that allows for education to succeed, to allow for people to collaborate, and for people who are normally marginalized from being at the table.
I found my deputy mayor of technology.
Tara, how do you add to that? Actually, I'll give you.
There's a lot of stuff to follow here.
Yeah, there really.
Do you have a specific?
I was thinking, because you're from the startup community.
Yeah.
What advice would you give startups, but also what advice would you give governments on how to make life much easier for you?
Yeah, this is actually what I wanted to address because I don't need to repeat anything that's been said. I agree with everything here.
That's quite rare for these things, and normally is.
Yeah. Well, these are, like basic societal needs that somehow we failed to meet. One thing that I want to say, just to be clear, is technology, the way it is a tool, but the way that it is wielded now is through companies, and companies' missions are to make money. So it's important to understand the paradigm through which, companies are making decisions. At the end of the day, they are accountable to stakeholders in general. So what I hope for is that actually we adopt more practices that are outcome-driven, that we actually pay for performance, and that early on, in the case of governments and vendors to government and sort of that commercial relationship, that before governments engage vendors, that they set the values that they want to meet. So like with our company, our mission is to empower cities with data to become more responsive and more equitable. You can really tell almost any story with data. So it's important to us that our customers actually first decide what are their goals, like what are their parameters, because our data is yes going to give answers, but for example, you may have a philosophy that if you build it, they will come. So if they build bike paths, they will come. But if your goal is actually not to make the street more bikeable, that's okay too. You might have a good reason, but state that value up front so that when you have the data, you actually know what to do with it. I think a lot of times, like in the smart city conversation, there's a lot of just like data collection for data's sake. And I think that's where we get into dangerous positions where the city then contracts like a giant consultant or giant tech company to spend tons of money, and then we don't actually end up better off. If we had like a pay-for-performance model, for example, our healthcare system would be very different. We'd be more interested in health outcomes rather than billing and the systems there. So ironically, like obviously I run a tech company.
But you run a you run a non-evil tech company.
I think so. But we can't guarantee that, every company is going to claim that. So it's important that as customers, governments have values and criteria that they're holding their vendors accountable to. And I actually don't think that in a lot of cases, especially in the tech sector, unfortunately, governments aren't well equipped to do that because they aren't, the staff don't have the right skills in a lot of cases, and they're not necessarily hiring for the next generation. Or, the famous saying, like, no one ever got fired for buying IBM. Well, what I love about, yes, but what I love about a lot of what Eric has said is, like, what politicians need to do is to be more experimental, to be able to admit, I think that's actually something that Bloomberg did well, is he said, well, we're gonna be courageous about doing some things that might not be popular, but we're gonna measure it. And if it actually has the impact we wanted, then we're going to keep it. And you're right, if it doesn't, we'll get rid of it.
Unfortunately, he did not do that with stop and frisk, and that's actually where I think he gets indicted because of the fact that he claimed to be a data-driven mayor, and yet the data showed that system was not working, and he kept on doing it, and that was a huge mistake, and it may cost him the presidency.
Agreed. I'll say in my transportation and urban planning world, they made some very courageous decisions that other cities have been very slow to do, like just generally reclaiming space for pedestrians from cars.
Can I ask, you made the decision quite early on at your company that privacy matters. You would have made a lot more money if you decided not to do that. How did you make the decision not to be evil?
Well, at the end of the day, we are just human beings that started this company, and to Andrew's point, I think we come from perspectives and backgrounds that informed, we wanted to start a company that helps contribute to the world we want to see. And when we started the company, really in 2014 was when pretty much all the headlines were Snowden leaks and Prism. And so, it was it would have been crazy for us to not see how collecting data could be, and especially the kind of data we collect, like visual data at the, initial sort of perception point, it would be crazy for us to store all of that because we're seeing a case study roll out in front of us on the news of government subpoenaing data that wasn't actually intended for them.
So on exactly that note, let's, Eric, you've heard different approaches. You've heard startups not being evil. You've heard how blockchain could work. What do you think can be used by the city right now?
A couple of things. I think that the foundation of how we live lies in our health, and as you stated, on our rearing of our children. And we have really moved away from using technology in the area that I believe in disease reversal. There's no reason we're not using telemedicine better. There's no reason a person would have to use the emergency room as their primary care. But not only that, I believe that we should list a database of the problems we're trying to solve in the city and have this new version of a hackathon, have the universe look at all of these problems. If we have the homeless crisis, 64,000 people are homeless, 113,000 are children, why not put it in the universe and ask those who are in the tech community and say, here's the problem that we're trying to resolve, give us your ideas. We did it with Benefit Kitchen, a great app we paid for. My office partnered with them. It shows all the benefits that are available to the average citizen. We send hundreds of millions of dollars back to Washington, D.C. People are afraid to go after a WIC and SNAP benefits because they can't fill out the forms. And we did the same with the gun violence. We put $1 million into smart gun technology research at our schools. We allow young people to come up with a plan of dealing with smart guns. How do we make guns smarter that only the owner could use the weapon instead of allowing someone to get in the wrong hand? A third of the gun-related deaths take place because of suicides. If it was the right person, we could sort of cut down a large number of deaths and stolen guns. So I think that we need to put it out to the universe. Instead of government trying to fix their problems using an 8-track method in an iPhone age, for those of you who are too young, 8 tracks was this thing that we used to have for music. So I think put this out to the universe and allow all of these smart minds. We have so many smart minds.
We've got the smart minds in the room.
Yes, and let them look at what are we trying to fix in government. Put it in the universe where government is this closed entity, and the arrogancy that because I'm in government, because a number of people, a small number, pulled the lever and elected me, now I have all the brains. No, that's not a reality. The reality that I'm in this city, we have some great, smart minds that are really disenfranchised, don't want to be part of government. It's too long, it's too bureaucratic, it is always shooting down ideas, and that is what we have to get away from. There are a host of things. We can run our traffic system in the clouds. There's no reason that we're not using the technology. We have to stop protecting jobs and find the new jobs that we could create out of technology.
Fantastic.
Can I
Thank
plug
you.
it?
So, yes. Yeah. So, time for some questions. So, I ask you to raise your hand. Think of an interesting, sharp question, and if your question can be in the form of a question, no long statements, that'd be fantastic. Yes, just here in the grave. Oh, you have a mic.
Oh, wow. Thank you. So the topic being smart cities, one of the things is markets can create winners and losers. So like in the food system, a lot of losers are created. I'm wondering, what systems do you think technology should come in to run that markets typically run? Do you understand the question?
So, yes, please.
Also, because I wanted to quickly plug 2 programs that are relevant to both the question you just asked and both the comments that were just made. There's a program called Startup in Residence that San Francisco started, but now 80 cities plus participate, and it actually involves like basically public RFPs that anyone can respond to and create solutions. Startup in Residence, I think now a group called City Innovate runs it. If you're interested in working with cities, they have lots of kind of micro RFPs that are very easy to respond to, and we have done it and are a successful alum of it. And we also use a program called Tech Talent Pipeline through the CUNY system. The state of New York pays for up to 2 interns every semester, right now through Hunter College. We are about to have our 5th and 6th Hunter interns through it, and it's been a really fabulous program. And these are, mostly kids who grew up in the city from all different backgrounds, and it's really amazing, and they're very, very sharp. The question being, where should government employ technology? I think, not to harp on my comment earlier that tech companies often are evil, but the thing when you start a company is in tech especially, I think generally the approach is who will pay the most first, because that's how you need to get into market. And the problem is cities don't get to choose their customers. They have to serve everyone equitably. So I think it's important for, as cities work with companies or technologies, to employ them, to implement specific solutions that are focused on equity, because the truth of the system is that the most underserved will continue to be underserved by the normal commercial market, and actually the government does need to play a role in making sure that everyone is served.
Fantastic. Let's have another question. In the blue. I think we've got a microphone coming
Good
to you.
evening. Can everyone hear me? Thank you. Thank all the panelists. You guys are great. We should give them a round of applause. You're doing a great job. So, a question I think ties in with everything, the blockchain things that you're doing, Esther, Andrew, Eric. My question is, where do you see the feasibility of smart, affordable housing? And this would address the tech actually being in the homes for individuals that are traditionally disenfranchised or on the other side of the technological divide. It would be, as simple as, creating somewhat living walls where there are monitors and the kids, the disenfranchised populations, the black and brown people who are normally not exposed to this information or technology. It'll be right in the home. There will be other smart aspects of the home and technologies that they grow into, and therefore, creating a better population.
Fantastic. Thank you.
If you don't mind, so first of all, we have to disabuse the notion that the real estate industry should dictate the future of our city, because right now the amount of money they put into politicians' hands is creating a huge inequity in the way we think about housing. But we also have to think about changing rules around how buildings are built and how building department regulations and other rules are also dealt with. And we have other challenges where you have things like Airbnb. Everybody thinks Airbnb is great. Well, the reality of it is that a third of all apartments that would otherwise be rented for a year that would go to low-income or moderate-income people are now off the market because people are using Airbnb, because they're also, in many cases, gaming the system. If the landlord has 5 apartments in a building and is now using an Airbnb, those apartments are not going to low-income people or middle-class people who could otherwise afford them. So we have a lot of challenges related to the housing. It's one of the biggest challenges. But to give you an example of why we don't have to necessarily wait for the government to do this, some of this can be done not waiting for the procurement or the innovation. I'll just give you one example of another startup that came out of Civic Hall. By the way, Benefit Kitchen came out of Civic Hall. City Mart came out of Civic Hall. Is a group called HeatSeek. So the second largest complaint in New York City, other than noise, to 311, is lack of heat. It has huge negative impacts on poor people who have 2 jobs, who if one parent gets sick, they lose their apartment. The kids don't go to school. If there's not enough heat in the apartment, those people get sick. And landlords very often skimp on heat. So what HeatSeek has done is create a little $3 device that literally measures the temperature in an apartment every hour. So when a tenant goes to housing court and goes up against that lawyer paid for by that real estate company that has the money to pay for a big lawyer, they actually have a log and a history of the heat that was in that apartment. That didn't wait for the city of New York to develop. That was developed by people who are actually just taking advantage of technology to create a more equitable city. So it's about a partnership between the city and technologists to create a more equitable city. But to start, we have to break the cycle of corruption that exists between the real estate industry and the political class in New York.
And I want to talk about that HeatSeek. There's going to be a story in tomorrow's Daily News talking about we were able to get Richie Torres to pass legislation of those landlords that experience a high number of heating complaints. That legislation is now, we're waiting for the mayor to sign it. Those landlords who have a high number of heating complaints, it would be mandated that they have the HeatSeek device inside of their buildings. Ironically, we had to fight HPD to get this legislation passed. They took the position that if you put this in their buildings, it could sort of send a message that the landlord is not doing the right thing. And I said, duh, they're not doing the right thing. That's why the device is going to be in there. But that's the bureaucracy of using technology to improve the quality of life. You miss days of school because you get a cold or pneumonia or the flu. You lose your job because you have to stay home with your children. It is the erosion of the quality of life that many people don't see. And when you have an agency that protects the landlord instead of protect the citizens that are inside the apartment, that is the problem we're facing in the city.
And it costs $3. Right. Yeah. Right, last question, so make sure it's a good one. This guy.
Thanks very much. So I'm Josh Futterman. I'm a multi-time founder with several exits. Been active in democratic politics since Bella Abzug's days. So, excuse me if I'm a little cynical about some of what you're saying today. And the other thing is my current venture is actually one of the original ventures that got selected for the grid. So some of you may know that. I have a question. I have a question. I want to set it up, though. Right? So we're members of the grid, which was created by the EDC and CivLab, who I think, Andrew, you probably know them. You may know them as well, Eric. And 7 or 8 months ago, the members of the grid sat together and we shared what we felt we needed from the city. This was supposed to have been brought to the city, and one of the big things was much better connections and relationships with the various departments in the city that we could work with and partner to solve major problems throughout the city. It is 7 months later, and we are not getting those connections yet. So how do we address this when it seems like there really is no incentive for the city to move aggressively on this?
Elect a new mayor.
Well, first of all, I think you have the right to be cynical. It is not your job to convince me. I have to convince you. And you should be cynical until someone is authentic. But one of the biggest dangers I believe many of us make is that we don't allow our inner voice, our inner psyche, our spirits to communicate with us. We become so hardened, and that we don't allow ourselves to say, do I feel this person, and do I feel how authentic he is? And when you do that, when you stop looking at poll numbers, when you stop looking at all of those other indicators, and you start using our God-given talent, our center. I'm a centered human being. I'm not a center borough president. I'm not a center politician. I'm a centered human being. And my role is to bring peace and humanity to the planet. That is who I am as a person, and that is why I believe I'm going to make a good mayor. I should win because I'm so better than everybody that's running. Thank you.
Okay, wow.
Phan,
One last one. Here we go.
I think we need to wrap, unfortunately. We have a tight... So we have...
Yeah, no, but this is for the borough president. That's okay.
We really don't have time. We'll talk afterwards. So make
So you
sure
can
you
stay where you are. Oh, stay where you are.
I'll do this.
Oh.
So I'd like to thank the panelists for an interesting conversation. So thank you, everyone. And please stay around for the fireside chat, which is starting right here in 5 minutes' time.